Okay. So hi everybody. Tonight, I hope you got over that horrible weather that we had last week, and then today's kind of a depressing day too because of the horrible incident that happened in North York today. That was really shocking and like just so shocking. And I guess it's a first for Toronto. So we're on the world map now. Thank you very much. Okay, so today I wanted to just go over what we've discussed in our other presentations. And then I want to talk a little bit at the end about why it's so difficult to stay on a macrobiotic diet or to make the changes that are necessary on a regular basis. So just to recap, there's the lifestyle habits that we talked about that are really important to incorporate into your practice, because without these, it's really hard to maintain a practice. So eating your meals at regular times, which we've discussed before, not to eat 3 hours before going to bed, getting up early and going to bed early so you catch that you're sleeping between 11 o'clock and 2 in the morning, like you're in a night in a good sleep between 11 o'clock and 2 in the morning. So it's important to go to bed earlier than what we're used to, and get up earlier as well, so so that your day starts when the sun rises, not necessarily in the summertime, but 6:30 in the morning you should be getting up. I think that's a really good time to get up. It makes you sort of be ahead of everything, events as they go on through the day. Um, and then you can eat your meals properly. So you're getting up early, you can have breakfast at a decent time, and then you'll be hungry for lunch, and then you'll be hungry for dinner, and then you'll be tired when you go to bed. Then the other thing we talked about and we're trying to emphasize is exercise. So in macrobiotics, what we suggest is the body scrub and the Doline exercise. If you're ill and you can't, if you're if you're housebound or you can't move around or you can't walk properly, just gentle tapping on your whole body is very helpful. And walking, if you're able to walk, I think what they're recommending now is walking 45 minutes, up to 45 minutes, 3 times a week. And macrobiotics would recommend that 20 to 30 minutes every day, like a nice walk without a destination. So, in nature, preferably, to get your circulation going and to refresh yourself and to reset yourself and to get rid of, stagnation and static. And then we discussed the meridian stretches last week. So that's the simple stretching exercise to release blockages in your meridians in your body. So we keep these lifestyle habits in mind. We'll add to them as we go along, but these are really important. So if you could just walk every day, do a gentle scrub every day, try to get up earlier, go to bed at a decent time, and eating your meals on time. Okay. Then we also talked about eating. We talked a little bit about eating local fruit, local food, indigenous food, preferably. I just wanted to talk a little bit about eating organically grown wherever possible. So there's a really big variety now of organically grown grains, beans, vegetables. You can get just about everything organic, depending, of course, where you live. But even in remote areas now, organic produce is available. So the reasons for eating organic are obvious. Food that's grown without pesticides or chemicals or fertilizers or artificial fertilizers is much better for you. So you don't continue accumulating toxins in your body. It's good for the soil because we don't continue to contaminate the soil and deplete the soil of its minerals. It's good for workers, farmers, farm hands, and so on, because there's often, we don't hear about it, interestingly enough, in the papers, but there are often accidents, workplace accidents involving chemicals, and people get burned, and they breathe in sprays and chemicals and pesticides, and we find out maybe some of these things come out years and years later. Also, or buying organic, encouraging organic farming is good for wildlife, for bees and frogs and butterflies and so on. And it's also it, well, organic is better than commercially grown vegetables and grains and so on. But it's probably not the the farming methods aren't optimum for replenishing the soil. But in any event, we're moving in the right direction by at least not adding junk to the soil. And of course, it's good for the planet and as a whole. So I encourage you to buy organic, but if don't give up variety for the sake of organic. So if you can only find carrots and onions locally where you live, eat commercially grown greens and so you can have a variety in your diet. So don't let um, lack of organic produce hamper your variety in your food selection. Okay, then the other thing that goes hand in hand with organic is locally grown. So now we have a great variety of organic foods that come from far away, from Mexico. There's all kinds of products now that you never saw before. Strawberries, organic tomatoes in the middle of winter that come from Mexico. That comes at a big price. So there's, the obvious factors like pollution with respect to transportation, but also in Mexico, they're growing organic food for us in wealthier parts of the world, and they're using our water. They're having to use great amounts of water to restore the deserts in order to irrigate like arid land in order to grow organic produce for us. So that's not a good thing either. So the other thing is that when you eat locally, you eat stuff that's close to you and you start damaging your own environment, you're much more apt to do something about it. But when we eat food that comes from far away, we're damaging habitats, in the Amazon or in Africa. We're destroying wildlife. We're displacing people off their land. We don't really see it. We don't hear about it, and it's very removed from us. So I think that's another really good reason of eating locally grown food. Also, it's important to have a good source of food that's local. So we have to have our own organic produce, not to rely on California or the southern U.S. So it support local farmers. You can buy a whole season's worth of vegetables that are delivered or you pick up once a week through your local CSA. So invest in that; it's well worth it. The other thing is that the foods that we import from far away, like bananas, citrus fruit, tropical fruits, mangoes, papayas, pineapples, coffee, sugar, whether it's organic or not, whether these products are organic or not. All these imported foods aren't necessary, and we're devastating vast tracts of land in other parts of the world to satisfy our silly, really frivolous needs. We don't need sugar. We don't need coffee. We don't need bananas and oranges and grapefruits, but somehow marketing or the media or just the government and the subsidies and all that stuff make us think that they're necessary and really important when they're not. Um, Also, things like coconuts. Now they've become a health food. So you get coconut oil, coconut butter, coconut everything, coconut milk, coconut drinks, coconut water. That's really wreaking havoc in the tropical land, as is palm oil, which has become popular again, and palm oil. And there's something else from the tropics that's creating big problems. So is quinoa that grows in South America. So farmers are using their land to grow quinoa instead of producing food for themselves, like grains and beans. Okay, so and we talked about animal food and the soy and corn that's grown and wrecking rainforests and so on to produce animal food for us. Okay, so that's what I want to say to that because we've already talked about it, but it's so important. So when you're giving up, when you're changing to a more healthy diet, you're having a big impact. Then the other thing is that so we're not separate from our environment. We talked a little bit about that. So food, us, our blood, our environment, they're all connected. So so when our neighbors consume drugs and they go into the water through feces and through elimination and so on, we end up having some of that. So we're not separate from each other. And that's something that we all know. We all know intuitively, but it's something that we really get to understand more as we eat whole food. So um, the importance of whole grains in the macrobiotic diet is important because yes, it's got fiber, it's got vitamins and minerals, it's got roughage, um, it has B vitamins, et cetera, et cetera. But grains are the only food that is both the fruit and the seed at the same time. So it's whole. You know, when you have vegetables, you eat the outside, the seed is in the middle. Maybe you eat the seeds too, but the seeds and the vegetable are separate. In fruit, like the seeds are in the middle of the fruit. The seeds kind of, the apple rots and the seed remains moist and it's able to sprout. But with grains, the seed and the fruit are one and the same. So that creates um, whole, it's a whole food for that reason, not just because it's a whole food, because the outer, the outer layers aren't removed. It's a whole food because the seed and the grain are one. And when you eat whole grains, when you eat whole food, you also start to experience that lack of separation. So I just wanted to throw that in. And you can listen to Michio Kushi's lectures. I've got one at least on my website, and he talks about that. He has a very spiritual approach to our food selection. Um, so if you start behaving as if you're not separate from the environment and as if you're not separate from other people, if you start behaving like that, then you're going to make choices that are going to support that lack of separateness. Do you know what I mean? And if you okay, so that you move towards that feeling of oneness with nature and with the rest of humanity. If you already have that sense of oneness, then your choices are automatically going to be supportive of that. So you can practice um, practice being brotherly or doing things that are kind to the planet, even if you don't feel oneness, and it'll take you in that direction. And if you feel oneness, you'll just naturally practice things that are beneficial to everybody. Um, next, I hope that makes sense. Probably a bit convoluted. Okay. Okay, so I want to get to why practicing macrobiotics is so challenging. I know people have a very hard time. We have a hard time. We want to do it. We can't stick to it. We fall off the wagon and get back on the wagon. And this can go on for years before you create a nice steady practice. I'd like your input on this. What do you find difficult about the macrobiotic diet? I get any good answers. But don't talk to me then. Okay. So um, sometimes it seems like macrobiotics is more difficult than, say, a vegan diet. And and I guess it is because with a vegan diet, you can just have no animal food, and you can eat just about everything else. So you can eat things that are you can eat sugar. I mean, the way a lot of vegans practice is you just don't eat animal food. You can have tropical food, lots of raw food, nuts, seeds, um, chocolate, smoothies, all sorts of food that I suppose it's easier to prepare and easier to prepare and more palatable, at least initially. But the reason I think macrobiotics is difficult is because change is difficult. It's difficult to change a condition, and you can't change without changing. You can't you can't change by making tiny little changes to your diet. You can only change if the changes are big and if they're done over a long period of time. And so when you give up animal food and when you give up sugar, the change isn't just about what you're eating. The change is also changes other aspects of your life, like socially, like relationships change. It just seems, oh, it's just food, but oftentimes in order to heal, people have to leave relationships. So sometimes relationships become stronger, and a partner becomes, unexpectedly supportive. But but it goes both ways, right? Change is change. So that's one aspect. It's just difficult to change. It's difficult to eat your meals on time. You never eat your meals on time. The body resists change, and it wants to stay the same. It wants to retain the status quo because that's nice and safe. So stepping outside of the status quo is always scary, even if it's unconscious and difficult. Okay. Also, the other reason that it's difficult to change to macrobiotic diet is because I think in the last generation, our generation, my generation, and yeah, probably starting with my generation, we become spoiled. So where my parents, which could now be in their 80s or 90s, that generation was used to more hardship, less abundance, less wealth, less luxury, and so on. And they went through more hardships than what I went through. So they're less spoiled. But even in terms of what they were eating, even in North America, and even in places that weren't war torn, if you weren't part of royalty, then your diet was much more simple than ours has become today. So you would have been used to less animal food, less rich food, less less dessert, say, or if you had a dessert, it would be after a meal or be once or twice a week. Things were more moderate. People didn't have 15 coffees a day. I remember people bringing uh, coffee in a thermos. We didn't have coffee shops at every corner. All that stuff. So we're spoiled. We're spoiled from birth, really, because um, I think the generation after me, like my mother, like the generation that gave birth to people in my generation, had much more difficult lives and much more simple diets. Okay, so already my children and their children experience richer diets. So the quality of our, our our health has deteriorated. We're not as strong as we used to be, and we see that with older people that have survived and the hardships that they went through, and you see their health, right? And they're bigger. So it seems like we've lost that to a great degree. So the spoiled factor, and we don't want to do anything hard. We want to be nice to ourselves and all that kind of stuff that goes on in your head. Okay, so that's number two. Then, because of the kinds of food choices that we've made, or the kind of food choices that are available in society, like extreme animal food, and then on the other hand, extreme in terms of sugar and alcohol and coffee and things like that, um, we have these strong cravings and we become addicted to these strong foods. So we're not eating too much in the middle. We're not eating too many vegetables. We're raised not eating too many vegetables or too much whole grain. We're eating mostly animal food, and then on the other side, um, white bread, pastries, um, tomatoes, cucumbers, things like that. Hamburgers, which are a combination of extreme young and also extreme lean, soft drinks, etc. So those, if your palate has been used to that for a very long time, it takes a great amount of willpower to change that. And willpower generally isn't enough. Michio used to always say that your food choices make it's your food choices that crave things. So if you have salmon tonight, tomorrow you're going to crave something sweet, no matter what. So it's not a question of willpower. It's a question of your food choices. So if you're one of those people that like the idea of changing, but you can't change because of your food addictions, you're going to have to be drastic in your approach. You may need to go somewhere for a couple of weeks and just don't bring any soft drinks and hamburgers or chicken or eggs or things like that, and just go cold turkey. I took Colin Campbell's course. He talked about doctors when people are making the switch from a regular diet who are quite ill and had to switch over to plant-based very quickly. They would basically book into a motel or for 2 or 3 weeks and just stay there and juice until their taste buds and their body got clean enough to actually appreciate good quality food. It takes more than 3 weeks, but I guess 3 weeks is a start to make enough difference. Maybe you get hungry enough that you start appreciating the whole food. Um, the other thing is drugs, right? So in the past 20 years, the consumption of prescription drugs has really skyrocketed. So it's very normal now for people to take and lots of antibiotics as they're growing up, and then to take anti-anxiety medication or antidepressant medication, um, acid reflux medication. Lots of people have thyroid problems, so they're taking mild thyroid medication. And then as they get older, it's just seems to be automatic that people start to take cholesterol medication, high blood pressure medication, uh, blood sugar medication. Lots of people develop type 2 diabetes, so they're on metformin or other forms of medication to regulate blood sugar. So being medicated starts at a very young age. And they're talking about, I think I mentioned this, that there's actually infants that are being prescribed antidepressants, which I found shocking, as early as 6 months. And there's actually children being prescribed medication for intestinal problems at a very young age. I just heard it on the radio that they have a higher incidence of developing very severe food allergies later in life. But I was shocked to hear that they were giving babies colitis type medication. In the old days, it was called colic, and you just walked them up and down until they grew out of the colic. I'm assuming that that's what the medication is for. But anyways, there was a direct correlation between this type of medication given to infants and then severe food allergies later on in life. So drugs are a problem because they ruin your intestines. Um, they wreck the biome, if you have any, to start off out with, depending on what your mother has eaten while you were in the womb, and and then not being breastfed um, creates problems as well. So drugs are a big problem, and big pharma and big agriculture, like they've sort of taken over the world, and you can't get away from pharmaceuticals anymore, and you can't get away from bad agriculture. I mean, you can get away from it, but it takes a Herculean effort. The options aren't readily available out there or readily visible. And then there's also an idea that certain foods are healthy, certain foods that are not healthy are healthy, such as I have a little bit of a list here. Like people think chicken is healthy because it's white meat. Chicken is not a healthy food. They think eggs are healthy for a whole bunch of reasons: protein, uh, vitamin E. I'm not sure. There's a myriad reasons, and naturopaths prescribe eggs and chicken to their clients. I don't know why, and they don't. It doesn't seem to matter what kind of ailment they have. Smoothies aren't a health food. You have to chew your food. Having food in liquid form. I mean, occasionally it's all right, but on a regular basis, is not good. It'll really gum up your intestines. Chocolate is not a health food. Coffee is not a health food. Matcha tea is not a health food. Chocolate milk is not a health food. I heard that in the Lawyers Lounge one day. Lawyers were having a discussion about how chocolate milk is really good for you. I actually couldn't believe that I was hearing this from people with many years of university degrees and so on, talking about how chocolate milk is really good for them. And yeah, it probably raises your blood sugar, so it makes you feel good. But okay, that's at the end of it. Cane sugar is not a health food. Coconut oil, I've already mentioned coconut oil, coconut water, coconut, anything in this climate is not a health food. Um, Food supplements are not a health food. Protein shakes, even vegan protein shakes, they're not health food. Tropical fruits are not health foods for this climate. And there's the list is endless, right? And we all hear people talking, oh, and then there's also the superfoods. And I don't have anything against superfoods, but superfoods can't replace proper meals 3 times a day. So maybe goji berries. Goji berries are very fashionable. I think people put them in smoothies. Goji berries, blueberries. Um, I don't know what the latest health food is. Maybe almond milk. There's nothing wrong with almond milk, but you have to be careful as to how much almond milk you ingest, right? So so be aware of that. When you go into Whole Foods, it's really hard to find. You have to stick to the outer aisles, just like in a regular grocery store. You stick to the produce and and then I was in Whole Foods the other day, and I was it was there was an overwhelming smell of meat. I couldn't believe it. I felt like I was in a regular grocery store, going by the butcher counter, and it was quite revolting given that it's health food, a gigantic health food chain. And so, anyways, even in the health food stores now, it seems you have to just go down the outer aisle. You go down the vegetables and produce section, and then you go around to the other side where they have, the plant milks and, soy and tempeh and fermented foods, and then that's about it. And you go pick up your, you know, in the middle aisles, you go pick up your tea maybe, and I don't know, because you can't get breakfast cereal; it's full of sugar. So be very wary of fast foods and marketing, even in health food stores. So then I already talked about willpower um, is is not enough, right? Willpower will get you started, and you need intention to get you started, but then you need to find support for yourself. So support comes in many forms depending on your needs, and you're in the best position to see what you need. Maybe you need to go to lots of cooking classes. So you can be around other macrobiotic people and have macrobiotic food that's prepared by somebody else. Maybe a meal service is for you to get you started. Maybe you need to figure out a better time to cook your food. And I think I may have mentioned this. I have a friend who figured out that what worked for her, because she had a really hard time with her dinner because she came home late. So what worked for her is getting up in the morning and cooking everything for the day in the morning. So she takes her lunch and her dinner to work, and she works with her husband. So she takes lunch and dinner for her husband, and everything's done in the morning. And that's been working out fantastic for her. This way she gets a proper lunch and a proper dinner. So I thought that was ingenious, because by the time she gets home from work at 6 o'clock at night, it's too hard to get it together to make a meal at a decent time. And if you need to reach out um, and have a macro buddy, or have somebody that you can talk to, somebody that can support you. Um, Sometimes, there's a summer conference, for example, which is a great place in Massachusetts to go to for a week, and all your meals are all taken care of. You're around other macrobiotic people. You feel normal when you're there. You don't feel like you have to explain yourself to anybody because you're eating this weird food. It's really wonderful. It's in the Berkshires. It's lovely. So, whatever, you have to figure out for yourself what you need to keep yourself on track. I remember listening to Dr. Phil one time. He was I used to listen to him. Yes, I watched his show, and he said that he put on a bunch of weight, and he didn't know why he was putting on weight, and then he realized that he would come in the back door through the kitchen door, and his wife usually baked cookies. So he would come in and go through the back door and take a handful of cookies and eat them, and then carry on with his evening. And he didn't know how to stop eating the cookies. And then he came up with the solution, and that was going into the house through the front door, so he didn't go past the cookies. And that really struck me, because if you can take yourself away from the temptation, or if you can create a situation where you can uh, you can make a space for taking care of yourself, then it'll work. No one else is going to do it for you. You're the only one that can make this diet work, and so you have to become ingenious about how you're going to make it work. Somebody I know, without mentioning any names, has a cook that comes in a few times a week to prepare a bunch of meals. Jessica Porter jokes about hiring somebody, like, instead of hiring a babysitter, she hires a local teenager to come over and wash dishes a couple of times a week. So it depends on what your impediment is. Dishes can be pots and pans, and dirty dishes can be one of the impediments, but it shouldn't be, right? Because the kitchen is a laboratory, and there should always be things happening in a macrobiotic Macrobiotic Kitchen. Okay, so any comments? Goji berries, said Susan. Yeah, goji berries. Isn't that what they're called? Those things from those berries from China. Yeah, a different way of cooking what we what up and surrounded with most of our life. So do you want me to put on? I'm going to turn off the recording. So, oh, one more thing, not to promote our tour, but we do have a Marco Polo tour happening August 25th to September 3rd this year, and Omar and I are going to provide tours of northern Italy during that time, and with macrobiotic meals. So if you're interested, look on the website or give me a call. Okay, so I'm going to put it on. I'm going to turn off the recording.